Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast with me, Rory Lees-Oakes. And with me is my fellow traveller in the phenomenological field as it's experienced, Mr. Ken Kelly. How are you, Ken?
I'm okay, Rory. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be congruent in that I'm feeling slightly less energetic today than normally. I've been pulling 14 to 16 hour days and I'm noticing it taking a toll. It's probably about 9 in a row now. So I am here and I am eager, but maybe less bubbly than normal.
Yes. And that's okay, isn't it, Ken? We don't have to be bubbly all the time. I'm reminded of what Rogers said. I don't have to be consistent. I just have to be myself.
Oh, I do like that. And being myself today, I am excited as I normally am for the episode today. So episode 52, what can you expect? Well, we're going to be speaking about role play, but we're going to be having a look at an important part of role play, and that is the self-care. So if you're bringing material and you're role playing in a simulated skill sessions, how do you protect yourself in that? Theory with Rory, a really good one. It is Topdog, Underdog, and we're going to be dipping our toe into Gestalt therapy there, Rory. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then ending off with a bit of a debate, and we're going to be speaking about the age barrier, and specifically from the point of view of the counsellor. Can we sometimes feel too old if we're working with a younger client? Can that be reversed? Can we sometimes feel that we're too young and unexperienced when we have a more mature client come in? So we're going to be debating that.
Yes, it's a packed episode, but we're going to start with what we try to do every single week on the podcast, is to take a comment that's been put in our Facebook feed. And if you want to know where our Facebook feed is, well, you can go to counsellingtutor.com, top right-hand tab. That's our home webpage. Click on that, and you see Facebook. Click on that. Knock on the door. It's a closed group, and we'll let you in. And you can join, I think it's 12,500 people who are interested in the world of counselling and psychotherapy. And every week we try and pick out a topic or a comment of one of the posters. And today it's Louise Brown. So hi, Louise. Thank you for your really interesting observation. And Louise goes on to say, I started my level 2 today and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. Everyone was nice, but I was a bit conflicted about counselling role play. And she goes on to say that, is it ethical to ask students to divulge their inner souls in a role play when counselling is indeed a contracted activity and no one should be counselled? It's a good one, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's interesting. And I remember teaching level 2, so I'm going back there now and I'm lecturing level 2. And I remember that my very first session was contracting. What do you as the group want from this learning? And one of the things that we would touch on is how we might work with role play and how that might be safe for the, because you're there, and I guess level 2 is a short duration course. There are people that you've never met before, and probably many of them you may never see again after the 10 to 12 weeks of doing that course. And it's a bit of a tricky one, because the other side of it is if you are bringing maybe made up material in a role play, well then is there congruence in that? I don't know. This is the debate, I guess.
Okay. Well, I'll just go on. She goes on to say at the end, is it possible to become a counsellor without being publicly counselled by a large group of unfamiliar non-counsellors? It's brilliant.
I love it.
I think the answer there is about how the tutor leads the group. And I taught, as Ken did, Ken taught level 2. I taught it for many years. And when you teach a level 2 group, you have to be aware that hardly any of them will know anything about the intricate details of the world of counselling and psychotherapy. And a lot of people who go in, and I remember doing my level 2 course as it was then, it was called an introduction when I did it, feeling very nervous and very exposed and very Frightened, if I'm honest, because it was nothing I'd ever experienced before. And what really gave me kind of reassurance was the tutor contracting and saying, you can share as much or as little as you want, and that's your right.
I like that.
So important. And also, that contracting should be, I think, a communal activity where the tutor kind of asks the students to form their own contract. And it's from them. It's from the students. And of course, the tutor has to have an executive mandate, because they've got legal responsibility being teachers, and also they're a bit further on down the line. But to answer that question, can you become a counsellor without being counselled by non-counsellors? I'm going to be controversial, Ken. You ready for this?
Go ahead.
I don't think counsellors are trained. I think counsellors are forged. And they're forged in the fiery furnace of personal development. And there's not a day goes by in practice where I'm not drawn to that training so that I stay in the adult when the going gets really tough in practice with clients, when they're talking about really tough material.
Yeah.
And that confrontation that I did of myself working with role play through the training helped forge that ability to stay in the adult.
I love it. I love it. And I also recognize that the question is coming from starting a level 2. And the counselling journey, the process before you get that graduation and you are able to go out and call yourself a counsellor is many, many years. And it's many, many years for a reason. And you may find, if you continue to go on with your studies, that you'll find that those bonds with your peers start to deepen as you maybe spend a year together doing simulated skill sessions, when you find yourself in personal development groups and the different ebbs and flows that happen right over there. And I might suggest that if I was to say anything on this, and I guess it's not a recommendation, it's a thought to kick in there, because this is more of a debate than us saying how it should be done, I guess, Rory. And I kick the ball in and I say, there are different weights of information that you can bring. There is no need for you to go delving into your deep, dark, painful life and the areas that are difficult for you. You don't need to do that. You can bring a irritation of something that happened when you were cut off by somebody that was driving badly, and you can bring that. It's still bringing a part of your real life without going into that deep, dark material. And trust is something that is built, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a good contract with a good tutor lead who informs and says, share as much or as little as you want. And I'll just give you one final observation of what happens if people make up a character and for role play. I can remember, in fact, I was talking to the person yesterday. I made a referral to a super counsellor, and she made up a character that she used so someone could test their skills. And I observed her, and what happened was, unless you're a professional actor, you don't know the backstory of the person. So the person who was practicing their skills, they literally came to a full stop because there was nothing left of this character this person had invented to be able to get an understanding of. And the only time that I asked students to think of characters as opposed to bring themselves is when I taught at an FE college, and I was asked to teach a counselling module on a healthcare provision. And the people were not going to be counsellors, and they were very young people. They were very, very young. Well, I say very young, which we'll get to in the next thing in the podcast, I think, about age. But they were very young. And they were some kind of 16. And they were very self-conscious. And I said, look, go away and find some soap star or some, famous person, pretend to be them, and the other people could do their skills. Because for that particular module, that was enough. And that made sure they were protected. But for those people who want to become counsellors, a little bit of a self-exposure, a little bit of discomfort, bad thing.
And I guess a closing thought from my side on that is thinking about why we have the simulated skill sessions, why we have that role play. And it is not there so that we can bring our material and that we can receive a therapeutic intervention. It is there so that the person can practice their skills. And if this is being observed, the person observing is watching the person who is playing the part of the counsellor and seeing what skills they're using and how they are responding. It's not for our therapeutic betterment. And part of any good counselling course is that you should be doing your own personal therapy anyway, and of course not at level 2. This is as you progress and working through your own stuff, and that's where you will take your own material and maybe dare to share that with your counsellor, and of course that again will be contracted and dependent on the trust and the feelings within that relationship. But very often a simulated skill session may be 20 minutes either way, and that is not an environment for bringing tough material.
Absolutely. And a good facilitator, a good tutor, hopefully would make that clear. But, as I send out permission across the airwaves, it's okay for you as a student to say, I ain't going there.
Self-care first.
Self-care first. Stay grounded and stay safe, as I always say.
You do indeed. You do indeed. And you say many other things, Rory. Sometimes you say things that are related to the theory of counselling that I myself sometimes find difficult to kind of process the difficulties of theories. But an interesting one today, because we're talking about dogs, and I've got a little dog called Benny, but I've got a sneaky suspicion that this is not really about dogs, Rory. You're speaking about Topdog, Underdog, and this is linked to Gestalt. Can you kind of give us a bit of a taster?
Yeah, and it's not the kind of dog that you get outside a baseball game or a football game. It's not a hot dog either. It's an idea in Gestalt about basically how we convince ourselves to do things that may be against our own better judgment. Shoulds and oughts. And I'll give you a quick example. The other day I was coming out of my local supermarket and the alarm went off. And I hadn't bought anything, so I just carried on. And there was someone else next to me who clearly hadn't bought anything. And they stood by the gate waiting for the security guard to come along so they could say, I've not bought anything. And they stood, and I was kind of observing this as I was walking along for ages. They wasted a huge amount of their own time because societal norms probably had informed them that actually they should.
Wow.
They ought to.
That's interesting. I'm looking forward to this theory.
Counselling Theory with Rory Lees-Oakes.
Fitzpearls believed that one of the most frequent splits in human personality is what he described as the Topdog-Underdog split. The top dog can be seen as your conscience, or as Freud would have described it, superego. You see, the top dog is always right, always demands perfection, and it threatens your self-concept if you do not obey it. For example, it's the feeling you get if you are speeding on the road or have that extra glass of wine in the evening, almost like a Jiminy Cricket figure telling you what you should and shouldn't do, and is by design an introjected value. The underdog, on the other hand, has a rather different approach. The underdog says, if only I could, I agree to anything, and I promise. The underdog is also very good at frustrating you. It's that part of the psyche that peppers the conversation with, I can't, poor me, I'll always be depressed and anxious. If the top dog is a parent figure that guides your moral compass, the underdog is the child, looking for ways of avoiding life's difficulties. According to Pearls, in the top-dog-underdog encounter, the underdog usually wins, triggering depression or anxiety. In fact, Pearls believed that there were very few really authentic individuals in society, and he also believed that to some extent, individuals are as manipulative as they are neurotic. Now, Gestalt is a therapy which has confrontation at its very core. Those of you who have watched the Gloria film, in which the founder of Gestalt, Fritz Perls, confronts clients Gloria's rather childlike presentation, can attest to this. And although modern Gestalt practitioners would use a more relational approach, the basis of the therapy remains that of reflecting back and challenging the client's incongruent parts, in the hope that they can become whole again. Hence the term Gestalt, which roughly translates to whole or circle. Now, one approach to this is called the empty chair technique. The purpose of the empty chair is to help clients break out of being trapped. The client sits facing an empty chair. They then proceed to imagine someone they are in conflict with from the past or the present and have unfinished business. The client speaks to the person as if they were sat opposite and tells them how they feel. By bringing the unfinished business into the here and now, the empty chair experiment provides an opportunity to move forward to resolution and to deal with the unfinished business, effectively sending the top dog and the underdog back to their metaphorical kennels while the client gets on with their lives.
Thank you as always, Rory. Very interesting indeed. And I couldn't help, when you were explaining that, drawing the parallels to person-centered therapy and thinking to myself, there's some similarities here. And I'm also going to let out here, just to be honest, that we did kind of maybe have a little bit of a discussion about that before we started recording the podcast here today. But if you enjoyed what you heard, as I did, and you want to get Rory's super duper handout, the best place to do that is log into your handouts vault. Now, if you're not a member of the Counselling Study Resource Handouts Vault, then that's okay. You can still get it. You just go to the Counselling Tutor website, which is counsellingtutor.com, click on the podcasts tab, that's right along the top of the website, and find episode number 52, and the handout is downloadable from the page. All the show notes from today's discussion are neatly laid out there, so it's kind of a précis. You can get a nice neat overview with all the references and links, so that's worth a visit anyway.
Yep, absolutely, Ken. And here we have another really interesting comment by, again, one of our Facebook members, Janet Steele. And she asks us quite a well-asked question, if I can use that phrase. She said, "Hi all, just wondered if anyone felt age is a barrier for clients. As a mature counsellor starting my journey, I wonder if I'm too old or might put clients off." Well, it's something that I've been asked a lot over the years as a tutor. And it's a question I asked myself because I was a school counsellor for 7 years. I worked at a school. And one of the questions I asked my supervisor was, at the time, I think I was in my early 50s, which makes you, if you're 15 or 16, positively ancient. Might as well. I used to. I'm not breaking confidentiality when I used to hear my clients say, and you never guess, my uncle, he's 52. He's really old. And I used to think to myself, well, there you have it. And so the question is age a barrier? What are your thoughts, Ken?
Well, the first thing I recognise from what you've said there is it's about frame of reference, because I'm sitting here, I'm 49, and I turn 50 not far in the future from now, and I think that 52 is rather young, Rory, and that's from my frame of reference. Maybe it is quite a hopeful frame of reference, but my frame of reference none the same. And what do I think about it? Well, what I think about it is as follows, and I'm primarily a person-centered therapist, and I believe that two people together, with the counsellor being there for the sole purpose of being there for the client and really, truly listening and receiving that client in their entirety and daring to go with them wherever that client chooses to go, no matter how scary that becomes or may be. Age plays no part in that. If you are able to work at that relational depth, and it may well be that when you first meet that there is a prejudgment. We do that. We may see someone and go, that's a younger man, or we may say that is an older person, and there's that moment of prejudgment. But I reckon that once you hit that relational depth, that all melts away. And I think back to, I guess, the origination of the where did counselling really come from? And I think of when we lived in caves and we were communities, and I think that maybe the elders of the village would be seen as the wise people that would sit down and counsel, and I say that in inverted commas, but be there for other people. So I don't know, I'm kind of mixed on it.
Well, it is an interesting one. I mean, through my practice teaching experience, I knew of one student that I graduated. She was 22. She was the youngest student I ever graduated from memory. And she did have one client who said, "You're too young for me." And, she was a bit upset about it at the time. And I said, well, I think that's the client stuff as opposed to your stuff. And, she was fabulous. She was a fabulous therapist. And she, I always say, I always said this, Ken, and people may be fed up of hearing this. Put your fingers in your ears if you're fed up of hearing this. But I always used to say, I can teach a way of doing, but I can't teach a way of being.
Yeah.
I could teach the theories, and I could test you on the theories and make sure you understand the theory. But the personal qualities to build a therapeutic alliance, yes, I can help you with skills. I can help you with looking at your own arc of development and how that might impact on the relationship. But actually, the way of being is something that the person themselves develops. And I don't think that really is age-related.
Yeah, that's interesting. Life journey related, perhaps. Self-evaluation related, likely. And we started off when we in our first topic, and we touched on that personal development during your counselling training, and really looking at self and going to that place of discomfort, because in that discomfort we find growth and we learn about ourselves. We learn maybe about the unseen to self parts, and we're able to then work on that. And I agree with you. And I think if the client is saying, I view my counsellor as too young, well, that is their right to choose, and because they come from their own frame of reference. If it is the client saying, I think my counsellor is too old, then that is their right. I think when it is the counsellor saying, I feel too old, too young, then it's worth exploring that and thinking, why is it that I feel that way? And going to that uncomfortable place within self and exploring it with peers, maybe even taking it to personal therapy. Because if there is a potential of that becoming a barrier, if you're there thinking, maybe I'm a little bit too old for this client over here, are you able to fully be there with that client? And I don't know. That's, again, it's just debating that topic.
Yeah. And my final thoughts are, if you're drowning, are you really going to look at the age of the hand that puts themselves and brings you in?
I like that.
You're really going to say, no, that hand's a bit too young, that hand's too old, I'll just carry on drowning.
And I guess that the flip side of the coin is, I remember when we were lecturing together, Rory, that part of that is new people coming onto the course and evaluating whether they're ready to take the course. And you can have someone who has maybe not gone through that personal development and doesn't have the life experience to be able to go on to become a counsellor. And I guess that's why that filter is there, because I guess maybe a bit of life does need to be lived, or a little bit of life needs to be experienced, felt, understood. Or does it?
Well, my view is, Ken, and I'm going to be controversial, I think that it's certainly in person-centred therapy, the core conditions that we talk about, the ability to really hear somebody, the ability to be with people when they're at their lowest, trumps life experience, because life experience is about your life, not theirs.
Oh, I like that. And I like that you challenged me on that, because, and that's what this is about. And that's certainly what Counselling Tutor is about, what our podcast is about, why we debate these topics and why we love your questions. And please keep them coming. Just go to Facebook, pop in the words Counselling Tutor. We come up right at the top there. If you're not a member, come on in, come and join these conversations. They are really rich veins of learning. It's been a good one today, Rory. We started off looking at role play and looking at self-care within that as a counsellor within our journey. We looked at theory with Rory, where we looked at Topdog, Underdog, related to Gestalt, of course, and ending off with that wonderful debate, which I think's got some more legs in it, Rory, and I'd like to see that continued on the Facebook group on age. Is it really a barrier?
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of episode 52. As always, we say, stay grounded and stay safe.
Take care. If you enjoy the topics and handouts here on the Counselling Tutor podcast, then you will love the Counselling Study Resource. CSR was built by myself, Ken, and Rory Lees Oaks to give you the support you need during your counselling studies. So get access to the world's most comprehensive collection of resources aimed at supporting you in your journey to become a counsellor. Take the stress out of your studies by visiting counsellingtutor.com/CSR. That's counsellingtutor.com/CSR.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.